Extremely limited, so order now.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Kevin Hogan. Today is the anniversary of the Tiananmen Massacre in 1989. The House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party is holding a press conference to highlight the CCP's ongoing repression and stand with those fighting for freedom in China today. President Trump's 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum went into effect today. An update on the ongoing trade negotiations and what Trump says about Chinese leader Xi Jinping. President Trump is urging Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. That follows data showing U.S. private employers added the fewest number of workers in more than 2 years in May. The Secretary of the Army asked lawmakers for help. He wants to speed up transformational changes within the armed forces to meet security challenges from the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump speaks to Russian President Vladimir Putin by phone. Putin says Russia will have to respond to Ukraine's recent large-scale drone attack against its bomber fleet.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Trump said this afternoon that he discussed Ukraine's recent drone attacks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump said Putin vowed to respond after the barrage battered Russia's bomber fleet. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace." The president added that he discussed Iran's nuclear program with Putin. When it comes to curbing Tehran's nuclear ambitions, Trump wrote he believed he and the Russian president were in agreement. The president added in his post that he believed Iran was, quote, slow-walking in negotiations. Higher U.S. tariffs on imported steel and aluminum kicked in today. President Trump signed a proclamation yesterday that put into effect his announcement from last week when he said he would double the levies from 25% to 50%.
White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said the move came after analysis showed the steel industry needed more help. The increase will apply to all trading partners except the UK, which is the only country to have struck a trade deal with the US. Its rate will stay at 25%, but the country is not a major exporter of metals to the US. Canada looks set to be hit hard by the new increase, however, as it's the top supplier of steel to America. And Mexico, another major exporter, said it would seek an exemption. Economy Secretary Marcelo Ebrard said the tariffs were unfair, as the US has a trade surplus in steel with Mexico. Wednesday was also the deadline set by Washington for nations to submit their best offers on trade. That's if they want to avoid Trump's Liberation Day tariffs taking effect in 5 weeks. Those duties were imposed, then paused for 90 days to allow time for talks. The White House says it has sent a letter to trading partners reminding them of the deadline. It asks countries to list their best offers in various sectors and says they will get an indication of the likely response within days. At issue for most nations is whether they retain the baseline 10% rate set for most shipments to the US or face a sharp increase. Japan said it had not received any letter regarding the offer deadline.
European and American officials are meeting in Paris to negotiate a trade deal. The European Union's top trade negotiator said the talks were off to a cooperative start.
Currently, our discussions are covering all the issues that are very concrete. We are talking about economic security. We are looking at tariff lines. We are discussing the market access, and also what can we do in the future to make sure that our trade relationship, which, as you know very well, is biggest on this planet, would be balanced and would be fair for the both sides.
European Union Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič told reporters that he spoke with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Šefčovič reportedly told his American counterpart that President Trump's 50% tariffs on European steel and aluminum is hindering trade talks. The EU has offered the U.S. a 0-for-0 deal in which both sides end tariffs on industrial goods, including autos. Trump has rejected that offer. EU officials say it's still on the table. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Secretary General Matthias Cormann also weighed in. He said the group supports the pauses on some of the U.S. tariffs. He added that global trade problems should be solved through discussion and agreement among countries. Take a listen.
We welcome the fact that after the initial announcements around tariffs were made by the United States, there's been pauses put in place that now enable and give some space for some of these conversations to take place. We are an organization that supports the principles of open markets and rules-based global trade.
President Trump said today on Truth Social that Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping is, quote, extremely hard to make a deal with. He said, I like President Xi of China, always have and always will, but he is very tough and extremely hard to make a deal with. The comment comes as frictions escalate between the two nations. U.S. and Chinese negotiators agreed in Geneva last month to a 90-day pause in their trade war. Amid heightened tensions, the U.S. is closely observing China's compliance with the recent trade agreement, which President Trump accuses China of breaching. The White House yesterday said Trump will soon be speaking with Xi Jinping. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more. And battle lines are forming in Congress after Elon Musk delivered his harshest criticism yet toward Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill. Lawmakers reacted to Musk's comments.
I don't make it personal at all. I like the president, supported the president. In fact, I'm for the tax cuts. I am for a lot of the bill, but I can't in good conscience give up every principle that I stand for and every principle that I was elected upon, and that's that we can't accumulate more debt.
Well, look, we obviously respect everything that Elon did with Doge. On this particular issue, we have a difference of opinion.
Behind the smoke and mirrors lies a cruel and draconian truth. Tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy, paid by gutting health care for millions of Americans.
President Trump wants the bill of tax breaks and spending cuts on his desk to be signed into law by the 4th of July. He's pushing the slow-rolling Senate to make it happen sooner rather than later. The House's Armed Services Committee examines the U.S. Army's posture and capabilities ahead of drafting the appropriations bill for fiscal year 2026. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details.
We keep funding things that the military no longer uses or needs, and so I think it's a much-needed conversation, and we're ready to work together in a bipartisan way to make our Army more efficient.
Do you agree that Congress has for years been appropriating funds for things that the Army doesn't need, and would you want to see that changed?
Yes, Congress is lazy. We need to be more efficient what we spend money on, and too often we keep spending money on programs just because we always have, not because it's what we need right now. So I think the transformation would be crucial.
Democrats and Republicans agreed that Congress has failed to address the budgetary issues that the Army faces.
The idea that China is our primary challenge, I agree with, but that challenge is global. It's not just in Asia. China's active everywhere in the world. This is a global competition.
Congress has not gone through a full appropriations process since 1997 and has heavily relied on continuing resolutions.
Well, we need to understand we're in the 21st century and that technologies are developing in a more rapid pace than our defense acquisition process. The United States government in the acquisition process has to start operating at the speed of business, not the speed of government, or we will not win the next war.
The Army's transformation initiative, directed by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, seeks to eliminate obsolete programs from the Army's budget, like the Apache helicopter, the Humvees, and the M10 Booker tank.
I mean, this is always a tricky balance, right? And I tell folks, it's not just about the top-line spending, it's how is that money being deployed. And I will always come back and focus on the people wearing the uniform, their families, and making sure that we're taking care of their quality of life.
Despite the challenges, lawmakers also celebrated the Army's achievements this year.
The Army met the recruiting goals 4 months early. And you know why? Donald Trump is the president and Pete Hegseth is SecDef.
For the first time ever, the White House's budget request for the Department of Defense for fiscal year 2026 exceeds $1 trillion. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party is holding a press conference marking the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Let's tune in.
Later today, many members of this committee will call on Washington, D.C. to end its sister city relationship with Beijing, a symbolic but important step in rejecting CCP propaganda and standing with the people of China, not its oppressors. Congress is united on that message. We will continue to expose the CCP's abuses, support those working for freedom, and ensure that the world never forgets what happened in Tiananmen Square. Thank you, and I'll now hand the mic to my colleague and our ranking member, Raja Krishnamurthy. Raja?
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of my colleagues for joining today. 36 years ago, we saw what the picture of courage in the face of tyranny looks like. It's one man, one person. He doesn't have a title. He doesn't have a megaphone. He doesn't have a social media following. He doesn't have weapons. All he has is his convictions. That's all he's got. And his convictions cause him to stand in front of a row of tanks. Ultimately, he became known as Tank Man, but to the rest of us, he represents freedom. He represents freedom. The old saying is, the secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. So he represents not only freedom, he represents courage. Today we remember those with courage who stood and fell in Tiananmen Square, and those who continue to fight across China and the world for their freedom. Because the tools of repression may have changed, cameras instead of clubs, algorithms instead of batons, but the goal of the CCP remains the same: to silence dissidents, to silence dreams, and to deny the basic dignity of its own people. We've seen it in the surveillance state in Xinjiang and the genocide against the Uyghurs. We've seen it in Hong Kong, where one country, two systems has become one party, no freedom. We've seen it from Tibet to Inner Mongolia, where citizens are punished for speaking their language and praying how they wish. Even here in the U.S., students and dissidents are harassed and threatened by CCP proxies for simply speaking out. That's why we're here, not just to remember, but to reaffirm. We stand for democracy, we stand for human rights, and we stand with that lone figure in front of a row of tanks. His courage did not stop a regime, but it started something stronger: a movement, a memory, and a mission. And that mission is ours now. Recently, I went to the CCP-controlled entity's LLM, large language model called DeepSeek. And I typed in the prompt in DeepSeek. I said, what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989? And the response was, let's talk about something else. No, let's not talk about something else. June 4th, 2025, 36 years later, when a single man stand in front of a row of tanks and showed us what true courage in the face of tyranny looks like, we're going to remember him and the countless others who seek their freedom today. And now, I would like to have Mr. Wei Jingsheng, a true hero who was there on that fateful day, speak to us. Thank you.
谢谢大家。
Thank you。
这边站着。现在议论的一个热门话题是全球民主在衰退。
A hot topic of discussion now is about the global democracy's decline.
其实不是民主在衰退，是民主国家对各国人权民主运动的关心和支持在衰退，对专制国家和独裁者们的压力在衰退。
It is a fact not a democracy that is declining, but the concern and support of a democratic country for human rights and democracy is declining. The pressure on authoritarian government and the dictator is declining. Therefore, various authoritarian
于是各种专制政权和独裁势力更加猖狂地镇压人民和民主运动和人权运动，看上去就像是民主在衰退。
Therefore, various authoritarian regimes and the dictatorial forces are more rampant in suppressing people's democratic and human rights movement. It looks like the democracy is declining.
民主在衰退，影响的仅仅是其他国家的人民吗？不是，民主国家也会受到不同程度的影响。
Does the decline of democratic concern affect only the people in the other countries? No, democratic countries will also be affected in various degrees.
恐怖主义猖狂行动背后的舆论支持，就来自全球民主的衰退。专制国家的人权民主活动逐渐消失，民主国家在国际舆论上受到的压力也在逐渐加大，这已经是一个外交上的难题了。
The public opinion support behind the rampant terrorist actions come from the decline of global concern for human rights. The human rights and democracy activities in authoritarian countries are gradually disappearing, and the pressure on democratic countries in international public opinion is also gradually increasing. This has become a difficult problem for Western democracies.
对此问题，谁的责任最大？当然是作为领袖的美国责任最大。
So what is the most responsible for the problem? Of course, the United States, as a leader, has the greatest responsibility.
值此6四天安门大屠杀36周年的纪念活动，我呼吁美国重新把人权外交提高到重要的议程，加大对各国人权民主运动的支持。
On the occasion of the 36th anniversary of the June 4th Tiananmen massacre, I call on the United States to raise human rights diplomacy to an important agenda again and increase support for human rights and democracy movement in various countries.
不只是口头上的支持，还要付诸实际行动，以此显示出美国的领导作用，停止全球民主衰退的趋势。
Not just verbal support, but also putting in practical actions. This action will demonstrate the leadership of the United States and stop the trend of global democracy decline.
谢谢在场的朋友们，希望把这个信息传达到更多的政治家和人民。
Thank you all for the friends present. I hope this message can be conveyed to more politicians and people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wang Dan. I am former student leader in 1989. Thank you to the Select Committee and the honorable members of Congress for holding this event to show support for the Chinese democracy movement. 36 years ago, I, along with thousands of Chinese students and citizens, took to the streets and stood in Tiananmen Square, expressing our hopes for democracy. For the past 36 years, I have kept thinking about one question: what made us take that action back then? Now, I finally have my own answer, and the answer is very simple: hope. Yes, we stood up because we had great hope for our country, for our society, and for the future of democracy. It was hope that brought us to the streets. If the Tiananmen democracy movement left behind any legacy, one of them is this: hope. 36 years has passed. China has changed a lot. One of the deepest and most serious change is that many Chinese people have lost hope on their country, in their society, and in the future. Some even feel completely hopeless. That is why so many have chosen to leave. But I believe that today, as we remember the 1989 movement, we want to tell the world, if we give in to despair, we give up everything. Only if we hold on to hope can China have a future and democracy have a chance. I believe the United States, as a leader of a free world, has a moral responsibility. I call on the United States to send a strong and clear message to the Chinese people that America wants to see a democratic China, that America support the Chinese people's right fight for democracy, and that America stand with the people of China, not with the Chinese Communist Party. Such a message, I believe, would greatly inspire the Chinese people and help them to rebuild hope. And as a side, hope is the true driving force of any democracy movement. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Mr. Wei Jingsheng and Mr. Wang Dan for joining us and sharing your story as you stood on that Tiananmen Square and being, peacefully protesting for freedom, democracy, fighting to crack down on the government corruption, only to be met with the harsh military crackdown. And you saw many of your colleagues being taken and being murdered. That was truly a Tiananmen Square massacre that happened 36 years ago. And so I want to thank the members of the media for covering this event today. Today marks the 36 years since that Tiananmen Square massacre, when brave students were met face-to-face with China's People's Liberation Army for peacefully protesting for political and economic reform. We saw on that day the lengths which CCP leaders are willing to go to keep their power and control their people. But we shouldn't be surprised. They torture Uyghurs in modern-day concentration camps. They throw Hong Kongers in jail for speaking out. They conduct mass surveillance of their own people, steal our intellectual property, and gaslight our friends and allies. And that just scratches the surface. And the fact that they deny Tiananmen Square to this day is even more telling. We must take their words and actions as they are, push back against their human rights abuses, and support freedom and human rights around the world. I want to send a message that our hearts remain with the victims, and their legacy reaffirms our fight to uplift those still trapped under CCP oppression. And Mr. Wang Dan, as you said, we hear you, and our fight will not stop. We're going to continue to speak out, and today gave us that opportunity to do so, but it's not going to stop today. We're going to do this every day and remember, and we're going to do this on a continual basis. So as a member of the Select Committee on China, CCP, I promise, and my commitment, to continue to stand with you and continue to fight with you. Thank you so much for having me. And I next bring up my colleague, Representative Dunn, to speak.
Well, thank you all for being here on the 36th anniversary of Tiananmen Square. What you see behind you is the best of America. It's not Republican or Democrat. There are people who believe in the voice of democracy, both those who are first generation and those who have been here for generations before. But what it is perhaps best at reflecting is the opposite of what Communist China has perpetrated on its own people. It's not just the Uyghurs inside China who have been oppressed by the CCP, those in Tibet or those in Hong Kong. It is people the world over who fall victim to this type of regime that has only its own power as its only priority. Just today, Kash Patel, the head of the director of the FBI, highlighted multiple individuals who came into the United States perpetrated by communist China to enact biowarfare on the United States. Agroterrorism, as it's called, using students to leverage their research here in the United States against U.S. crops. Now, I'm just a farm kid from Iowa, but we have seen this time and time again. As an intelligence officer, and then as a counterintelligence officer who operated inside China, I saw this firsthand. But I saw it first in the farm fields of Iowa, where Chinese operatives came to the United States to literally steal corn out of the ground to thieve our intellectual property. Today, the Chinese Communist government uses that to steal the intellectual property of thousands of companies across the globe, including 3 major cyber attacks here on the United States. What this committee does is a reflection of what these individuals have been doing for decades, standing up and calling out China at every step. But the good news is there is a bright future, both for America and for the people of China. The bravery that was shown 36 years ago in the face of communist tanks is the same bravery that resides in China today. And it's the same fortitude we continue here in the United States. I know that working together, we have the opportunity not only to bring down communist China, but to bring up democratic-loving people around the world. With that, thank you for the committee. Thank you to our chairman. And I'm proud to bring up a Democrat colleague from California, Mr. Rokon.
Sorry. Aloha, everyone. Not Ro. Congresswoman Jill Tokuda from Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. 36 years ago today, tanks rode through Tiananmen Square, but what shook the world wasn't the bloodshed or the gunfire. It was the people, ordinary individuals, unarmed but unstoppable, standing shoulder to shoulder with a simple call that echoes and resonates to this day. There were students, there were laborers, businessmen, soldiers, teachers, young and old, from all walks of life. They called for free press, for government accountability, for the right to assemble peacefully and express themselves freely. And above all, they came together for democracy. 36 years later, thousands more have carried that dream forward, despite the threats, the arrests, the torture, the forced disappearances, and the murder perpetuated by the Chinese Communist Party. They fight on because that dream of democracy, that desire for freedom, is not bound by class or caste. It's neither granted nor taught. It is human, it is innate, and it's worth fighting for. It's the real Chinese dream, spoken of in hushed conversations and kept alive by small unseen acts of resistance. The one that beats in the hearts of countless Chinese people who still yearn for freedom and reject the false promises of national rejuvenation peddled to justify the theft of their human rights. I remember wearing all black in high school on June 4th. I would take pictures of the massacre on my shirt with the words "Never Forget" scrawled across my chest. At that time, it felt like a protest. Looking back now, I see that it was actually just the beginning of an understanding, that the fight for freedom and democracy isn't waged in a single day. It lives on in the choices we make, and the actions we take every single day. Today, as we remember those brave souls, we recognize that the battle for democracy continues. The weapons of tyranny have changed. They come now as disinformation, corruption, and hate. The wounds aren't always visible, but they are still very much real. Yet the courage to resist endures as well. So today, we stand in solidarity with those who still march, who still hunger and thirst, who still believe in freedom and democracy in China. They remind us that democracy isn't a place we arrive at. It's a promise we keep. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the founder of modern China, proudly educated in my home state of Hawaii, signed his last testament on his deathbed. He wrote then, "The revolution has not yet succeeded. Comrades, you must carry on." 100 years later, his words still ring true. For the martyrs of Tiananmen Square and their dream of democracy and freedom in China, We must carry on, and we are with you. Mahalo, everyone. And at this time, I call up Representative Newhouse.
Thank you, Congresswoman Takuda. Thanks to all of you for being here to help amplify these important voices. 36 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party, as well as the People's Liberation Army, murdered protesters that were standing up to the corrupt authoritarian regime. While we remember those that were lost in that tragedy, we cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that the CCP refuses to acknowledge the reality of the events on that day. They censor, they distort, they impose punishment on those that have the courage to speak the truth. This is the same CCP that uses fear and aggression to spread its influence across borders and across oceans, that stifles dissent and tightens its authoritarian grip on those in China that dream of a better world for themselves and for their families. The United States has a long history of setting example for others, an example that represents everything opposite of regimes like the CCP. That is why that we as policymakers and Americans must remain steadfast in our responsibility to be a beacon of freedom and liberty throughout the entire world. So I want to thank my colleagues, the members of the committee. I want to thank the people behind me and those that aren't here that are standing up for freedom in China. And I want to thank them for helping to shed light on the CCP's deception and gathering to remember the tragedy of Tiananmen Square. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Bilirakis of Florida.
Thank you. I'm Gus Bilirakis from the great state of Florida. Today we gather to remember the events of June 4th, 1989, a day that continues to resonate as a powerful testament to the human spirit's unyielding demand for dignity, freedom, and justice. 36 years ago in Tiananmen Square, thousands of students, workers, and everyday citizens stood together in peaceful protests, calling for democratic reform and greater political transparency in China. Armed only with their ideals and the courage to speak truth to power, they faced a government that refused to listen, unfortunately. The world watched in disbelief as that peaceful movement was met with violence, seared into global memory by the iconic image of one man standing alone before a column of tanks. Today, we honor the memory of those who lost their lives and the voices that were silenced. We also pay tribute to all who continue to speak out for freedoms in China and around the world, often at immense personal risk. Remembrance itself is an act of resistance. To remember is to proclaim, this happened. These lives mattered. Their dreams still matter. Sadly, the Chinese Communist Party continues to repress its own people and to ignore international law. In recent years, we have witnessed the dismantling of Hong Kong's civil liberties, the continued persecution and ethnic and religious minorities, including the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, and the Falun Gong practitioners, and increasingly aggressive behavior towards regional neighbors. China has violated international treaties, encroached upon sovereign borders at sea and on land, and engaged in deathly skirmishes, including the Indian frontier. Most egregiously, it has silenced whistleblowers and concealed critical information in early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, actions that had devastated global consequences. China must be held accountable for these violations. Throughout history, humanity has encountered many faces of injustice. Our brightest moments as an international community have come when we stood united against tyranny and repression. Our darkest hours have come when those who knew better chose silence over action, allowing injustice to spread unchecked. America must remain a beacon of principled leadership, grounded in the defense of human rights and democratic values. If we fail to speak out against the CCP's abuses, we abandon that responsibility and risk the erosion of the moral foundations of civil society. So today, on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square tragedy, I am proud to stand not only in remembrance, but in resolve to speak truth, to defend human dignity, and to affirm that even in our darkest hours, hope for a freer, more justice world endures. Thank you.
Pardon me. My name is Chris Smith. I am co-chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and I thank you all for being here and for staying and to follow so many very eloquent speakers that have preceded me. You know, in early 1994, I met Wei Jingsheng in Beijing after the CCP briefly released him, only to be rearrested. He was such a high-value political prisoner that they thought they might get Olympics 2000 by releasing this amazing human rights champion. Well, we had dinner together. Right next to us was the Chinese secret police, looking on, listening in, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, when you kowtow, when you are weak and vacillating towards the Chinese Communist Party, they beat us more in prison. When you're tough, when you name names, and you know what you're talking about, they beat us less. So this idea of accommodating the likes of Xi Jinping and others, and all the others over these years, has only led to more beatings, and of course nobody commits crimes like Xi Jinping and his ongoing genocide. Wei Jingsheng and Wang Dong are heroes, and we need to recognize them as that. They are just amazing people. We all remember 36 years ago, as all of us watched with hope, and I think Wang Dong hit it so well. You know, there is still hope. It's taken hits, but there is still hope that democracy will emerge and respect for human rights. Mothers lost sons, fathers lost daughters, and China lost, at least for a time, a very, very idealistic generation, but that has not gone away. It continues to this day. We remember this date each year because it's too important to forget, but also because it's too dangerous to recognize this date in communist China. Either you stand with the tank man or you stand with the tank. There is no middle ground. I remember when Cha Tian, the butcher of Beijing, was invited by the White House in the mid-1990s and was given a 19-gun salute, went to the Army War College. Here's the guy that was the operational commander for Tiananmen Square massacre. And he says to a group of officers who asked, how many died at Tiananmen Square? He said, no one. Within 2 days, I put together an emergency hearing. We had all these Chinese dissidents, Time magazine correspondents, who proved that was an absolute lie, and they continue that lie to this day. We invited Cha Tian to come and testify. We had an empty chair because he never showed up. Let me just say briefly, you know, several of the colleagues talked about how important it is that we take action. Just a couple of weeks ago, the House passed my bill, Stop Forced Organ Harvesting, and it was a 406-1 vote, totally bipartisan. And we're saying, stop what you're doing to these mostly Uyghurs and Falun Gong practitioners, average age 28, where when you need something for the market, because it's a billion-dollar industry, you find that person, kill them, take 2 to 6 of their organs, and then sell them to that person. This would criminalize that in a very, very serious way, up to 20 years in prison for anybody who's part of that supply chain. and hopefully the Senate will take this up. We passed it, like I said, overwhelmingly. I believe that someday China will be free. Someday the people of China will be able to enjoy all of their God-given human rights. And as a nation of free Chinese men and women, they will honor and celebrate the heroes of Tiananmen Square and all those who have sacrificed so much for so long for freedom. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, all of you, for coming, and for all those who participated today. And we remember Tiananmen, and we stand with the Chinese people, and we will never stop speaking the truth about the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can take it.
That was lawmakers and people present at the Tiananmen Square massacre speaking about the horrors of that day and the resolve to bolster human rights in China and across the world. And meanwhile, demonstrators in Hong Kong are marking the 36th anniversary of the 1989 massacre. Tensions are high with activists and bystanders facing police pressure. Pro-democracy activist Liu Yuklin was escorted away by police. Hundreds of police officers were stationed around Victoria Park, once the site of annual vigils that drew tens of thousands. Today, police tents were set up near the park. A few students holding white flowers were stopped and searched. The U.S. consulate in Hong Kong and Macau displayed LED candles in its windows to commemorate the anniversary. NTD will broadcast special coverage today, taking a closer look at U.S.-China trade relations and commemorating the June 4th, 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Here's a preview.
As world markets watch the current trade truce between the U.S. and China, talks of China opening up are cropping up again. It's a phrase with echoes in the past. What happened the last time major calls for economic reform, even government reform, rang out inside China? What took place that fateful day that is still remembered around the world but silenced inside China? Join us to see if global trade is under the shadow of 1989, only on NTD.
Stay with us. Two Chinese researchers at the University of Michigan were charged for smuggling what's believed to be a dangerous biological pathogen into the U.S. What FBI Director Kash Patel says about the case when we come back.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
Stay tuned to get a free month of home warranty protection. Tired of searching for contractors when your home appliances and systems break down, only to leave you stuck with a huge repair bill and shoddy repairs? Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and appliance breakdowns could cost thousands.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they could do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way.
I would recommend anyone who is listening to this to call Choice Home Warranty up. It eliminates the anxiety, frustration, and it saves you money.
Don't let an appliance or home system break the bank, leaving you stressed. Call Choice Home Warranty before that happens and get your first month free. Plus, call in the next 5 minutes and we'll give you free limited roof leak coverage. That's a $70 value, free. Just call now.
No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just the peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. I trust Choice Home Warranty with my home, and you should too.
Year after year, Choice Home Warranty is recognized as the nation's top home warranty and has thousands of 5-star reviews from real homeowners. Experience real budget protection and call Choice Home Warranty now.
Stop throwing money down the toilet chasing contractors. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Don't wait another minute. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. That's over $100 in savings. This offer won't last long. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-216-9114, 800-216-9114.
Welcome back. U.S. private employers added the fewest number of workers in more than 2 years. Payroll processor ADP reported that private sector jobs rose by 37,000 in May. That's the smallest increase since March 2023 and is below expectations. The slowdown was driven by losses in goods-producing sectors. In the report, ADP's chief economist said that hiring is losing momentum, but pay growth is holding at robust levels. Following the data, President Trump again called on Fed Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates, citing global rate cuts and signs of weakening labor demand. The ADP report comes 2 days before the government's monthly jobs report. It's often seen as a preview to the government report, but has less impact. 2 top U.S. officials have issued a warning. America's economic foundation is at risk. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are calling for a return to industrial strength. Here's more on that story.
Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio Tuesday sounded the alarm on America's shrinking industrial base. They gave the keynote address at a gala in Washington, D.C. for American Compass, a conservative economic think tank. Rubio warned that decades of moving manufacturing offshore have undercut U.S. national security and left the country vulnerable to adversaries like China.
We didn't just undermine our society. We didn't just undermine our domestic economy. We've undermined our position in the world.
He argued that U.S. foreign policy for too long prioritized global interests over the national good.
The number one foreign policy priority of the United States needs to be the United States and what's in the best interest of the United States.
Rubio said trade policies must now shift to reflect national interests, calling for an end to trade imbalances that hurt American workers. Vice President Vance echoed that urgency, warning that America's ability to innovate is tied directly to its capacity to build.
This idea that we can separate the making of things from the innovating of things is, I think, totally farcical.
Vance said the U.S. has let its skilled labor force erode and now faces a national emergency to rebuild core competencies.
The president's very focused on that, but it drives home, how much of a national emergency we're in, that we've lost critical skills, and we weren't even aware that we had lost those skills until a few months ago.
Both Rubio's and Vance's remarks underscore the Trump administration's new economic strategy, one that favors tariffs and bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. The administration's latest tariffs remain under legal review and negotiations with China are ongoing. Meanwhile, Vance and Rubio say America's economic future must be built at home.
FBI Director Kash Patel yesterday sounding the alarm about China's threat to America's food supply. He said 2 Chinese nationals were charged for smuggling what's believed to be a dangerous biological pathogen into the U.S.
33-year-old Yuanqing Jiang is a research fellow at the University of Michigan. According to the Justice Department, Jiang and her boyfriend smuggled a fungus into a laboratory on campus to study. Federal prosecutors say the pathogen is considered an agro-terrorism weapon that causes the world billions of dollars in economic damage annually. The Justice Department says the toxins from the noxious fungus cause vomiting, liver damage, and reproductive defects in humans and livestock. What's more, court documents show Jiang allegedly received funding from the Chinese Communist Party for her study on the fungus. Federal prosecutors say her devices also contain information describing her loyalty to the CCP. In a statement, FBI Director Kash Patel said the case is a, quote, sobering reminder that the CCP is working around the clock to deploy operatives and researchers to infiltrate American institutions and target our food supply, which would have grave consequences. It comes after the Secretary of State said the Trump administration would aggressively revoke the visas of Chinese nationals studying in the U.S., including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. The University of Michigan said it will continue to cooperate with the investigation and added that it hasn't received funding from the Chinese regime in relation to the research, and condemned any actions that seek to cause harm or threaten national security.
Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs vetoed a bill that would have prohibited the Chinese Communist regime and state-owned companies from buying property in Arizona. The bill was introduced by Arizona Senate Majority Leader Janae Shamp and vetoed by Hobbs on Monday. It aims to stop China from buying or owning more than 30% of any property in Arizona. The bill was created to protect the state's military, commercial, and agricultural assets. It's meant to prevent foreign spying or sabotage that could threaten national security. But Hobbs said the bill was not effective at counterespionage and did not directly protect military assets in the state from such potential threats. The governor also said that the bill is unclear on how it would be put into action and that it could lead to arbitrary enforcement. She did not explain further. Shamp criticized the governor's veto and said it was a politically motivated move. She said that Arizona's future could be at risk if Hobbs keeps making similar decisions. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered the Navy to rename a ship named after Harvey Milk. He was one of the first openly gay elected officials in the U.S. The move was first reported by the Military Times, which obtained a memo from the Secretary of the Navy's office. According to the memo, the directive aims to reestablish a, quote, warrior culture in the military. The USNS Harvey Milk was named after the gay rights leader in 2016. Milk went in to become a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He was killed by a former city supervisor in office in 1978. Critics, including Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi and Governor Gavin Newsom, are calling the decision shameful and an attempt at erasing Milk's legacy. Pentagon officials have told Fox News more renamings may be on the way. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army says it met its recruiting goal of 61,000 active duty soldiers 4 months ahead of schedule. It's a sharp turnaround after years of shortfalls, and the Army is crediting both new recruitment initiatives and a renewed sense of patriotism among America's youth. Army officials point to higher bonuses, a new prep course and recruits, and an updated recruiting force as key drivers of the rebound. The Trump administration has also taken credit, saying the surge reflects growing enthusiasm for military service under new leadership. President Trump and Defense Secretary Hegseth credit the uptick to ending DEI-focused policies. With several months still left in the fiscal year, officials say new recruits will help build momentum heading into 2026. California is planning to remove ultra-processed foods from school meals. The California State Assembly yesterday moved to pass a bill to remove the food that they deem harmful. The legislation requires defining ultra-processed foods are most detrimental to human health by July 1st, 2026. Numerous studies have linked an additional serving a day of these foods to a greater risk of developing or dying from dozens of conditions. These include cancer, heart disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Once a definition for particularly harmful is established, the bill moves onto implementation. Starting February 1st, 2027, vendors selling food to California schools would be required to submit an annual report listing any ultra-processed foods that fall under the new definition. Special Envoy to Russia and Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, comments on the recent Ukrainian attack on Russia. Kellogg says the risk of escalation is rising significantly after Ukraine struck Russia's nuclear-capable bombers. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has the latest.
Kiev recently used drones to strike Russia at several air bases. Ukraine says it destroyed many of Russia's nuclear-capable bombers. Special envoy to Russia and Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, now tells Fox News that this attack might raise the risk of escalation.
And I'm telling you, the risk levels are going way up. I mean, what happened this weekend, people have to understand in the national security space, when you attack an opponent's part of their national survival system, which is their triad, the nuclear triad, that means your risk level goes up because you don't know what the other side's going to do.
The nuclear triad Kellogg mentioned are the three main ways each power has to attack with nuclear warheads. Those are strategic bombers as well as sea and air-launched ballistic missiles. Kellogg says the actual damage to the bombers is less important than the psychological impact on Russia. Moscow has not yet directly commented on the attack, but just on Wednesday, President Vladimir Putin said Russia is not seeking a ceasefire with Ukraine.
Ukraine asks for a ceasefire for 30 or 60 days. They ask for a summit. But how is it possible to make such meetings in these conditions? What is there to talk about?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday proposed implementing a ceasefire until a meeting with Putin can be arranged. Ukraine has proposed many ceasefires ever since Russia invaded Ukraine. Zelensky also often mentioned that he's open for talks with Russia. Most of Ukraine's offers have been denied throughout the conflict. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
President Trump said this afternoon that he discussed Ukraine's recent drone attacks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump said Putin vowed to respond after the barrage battered Russia's bomber fleet. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace." The president added that he discussed Iran's nuclear program with Putin. When it comes to curbing Tehran's nuclear ambitions, Trump wrote he believed he and the Russian president were in agreement. The president added in his post that he believed Iran was slow-walking in negotiations. Up next, the White House press secretary under former President Biden announces she's quitting the Democratic Party, and we'll have that story and more for you after the break.
Supermodel Cindy Crawford doesn't just walk the red carpet, she rocks it. At 58, she steals the show and wows the press. Hollywood Life exclaims, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. While Page 6 raves, she's still as gorgeous as ever. What is Cindy's secret? It's meaningful beauty. And now with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever. Watch as the appearance of lines and wrinkles are diminished in just weeks. It's no wonder everyone's talking about meaningful beauty.
My makeup artist said, your skin has been looking great lately. What products are you using? And I said, I'm using Meaningful Beauty. And she said, really? I've tried Meaningful Beauty before. I love those products. And then the other lady down in the trailer said, I use Meaningful Beauty. I love it.
Our new and improved formulas deliver age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin where wrinkles begin. And this brand new offer is Cindy's most exciting ever. Because when you order, you'll get Cindy's exclusive Super Brightening Duo, a $120 value absolutely free. First, you'll get 60 of our Revive and Brighten eye masks, the celebrity secret that visibly smooths, awakens, and restores the area around your eyes. Next, discover the power of our Vitamin C Biphase Brightening Oil for an immediate boost of glamour and glow.
I'm not ashamed to say I am 53 years old. Thank you, Cindy.
The total effect of this free gift package? A red carpet ready complexion. Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
So make the call or go online now and put yourself on the path to the most beautiful skin of your life. Trust me, it's worth it.
This special offer is not available anywhere else, so don't delay. Scan the code, go to meaningfulbeauty.com, or call the number on your screen now.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20%.